Welcome home, my little hellhounds. Today's vid is a little different. We are getting involved in the teamseas movement. Seeing as the team trees were so successful, Mr. Beast, Mark Rober and hundreds of other YouTubers are getting together to raise $3 million to clear out £3 million of trash out of our rivers and oceans and the beaches. The beaches, oceans and rivers and the wildlife living in them really do need our help. They are swamped in trash and rubbish. We enjoyed the crystal clear beaches growing up, so our children and grandchildren deserve it too. And more importantly is the wildlife deserves a clean, safe home. I love horror, but I hate the horror of the rubbish in the oceans. I have already donated to the cause, so if you have a couple of dollars spare, consider donating it to TeamSeas to clean up our oceans. Just think, for every dollar is donated, that means a pound of trash can be removed. But if you don't have any money spare but still want to help, you can. You can go to the beaches, streams, rivers and clear up any litter you see and recycle it. And remember, always take your rubbish home. So click the link below to donate and find out more of how you can help. Tonight we have 3 scary stories to sink our hellish teeth into. And on the theme of Team Seas, the first 2 are based around the ocean. So if you like scary stories and a clean ocean, then don't forget to subscribe. And when you find the like button, take it out on a cruise for a nice holiday and drown it in the reef. And don't forget to take the plastic ring pull off the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. The bloop, posted by dependent ad 87492. I'm an urban explorer and a debunker, but I've debunked this legend. Let's start with some background information of me. I'm a guy 22 years old, considered gay, and a very nice guy. Now, on to my story. So one day I decided to go to the ocean to pick up some sounds while taking pictures of under the water of the Pacific Ocean. So I packed everything I needed for the trip. Strangely, this long white-haired young man wanted to go with me. I'll elaborate on his name later. So off we went. So I got a chance to talk to the long white-haired young man. So, can you tell me about yourself? Okay. My name is Sephiroth. I'm at least 20 years old and former rival of Sora. Alright then. So I told him about myself as well. So, Sephiroth was going fishing for some bull sharks, I guess, and I was doing my other stuff, taking pictures under there and using my hydrophone at the same time. A few hours later, I downloaded the pictures I captured underwater and the sounds the hydrophone picked up. I listened to the sounds. Then in one of the sound files, I heard some weird roaring noise in that file. I showed Sephiroth, and he was weirded the fuck out as well. When I looked at the pictures, and in one of them, I saw a kraken-like creature I also showed this to Sephiroth. Apparently he knew what it was. I know that creature. Wait, what? Tell me what it is. That is the bloop. One of the most popular scary noises ever recorded. Now you've just proven that this legend is real. I was creeped the fuck out. Then the boat started to rock back and forth. The fuck was that? Seraph said. I don't know. Let me go check it out. So I went to the basement of the boat and I saw some pink animatronic. I had to make sure it was deactivated before showing Sephiroth. It was, but something ran past me. Who's there? I picked up the animatronic and yelled, Sephiroth, is that you? Then, the kraken-like monster I saw in the photo revealed itself. I backed up and said, are you the bloop? Yes, little one. And I'm gonna be the one to tear into your flesh. Then he lunged at me. I ran to the top of the boat, placed the animatronic at the back of the boat, and went to Sephiroth. Sephiroth, you better have a weapon, 'cause the bloop is after me. Then the bloop was in Sephiroth's and my sight. Give me the human, the bloop said. No, Sephiroth said, in a scary voice. Stand back, I got this. Then he pulled out a fucking sword. A fucking sword. Get off this boat or face the consequences. Okay, human, jeez. Don't have to be a mean meal to me. Then the bloop jumped off the boat. There. It go. What? Why did you find this spring lock suit? It's deactivated. It's not deactivated. It's sleeping. Then Sephiroth threw the animatronic into the ocean. Sephiroth, what are you doing? Putting the animatronic where it belongs. So, there's my story. I don't know what the animatronic represents, but I've seen it before. I just can't put my finger on it. Squid Game. The Pink Soldier. It's a Springtrap version of that Pink Soldier. There were two threats this whole entire time. How I saved Newfoundland from a Viking invasion, but nobody believes me. Posted by MTP6921. I have one of the easiest jobs in the world. My job is to ensure the gasoline-powered generator keeps the lighthouse visible for boats and ships off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. At one time, working in a lighthouse was much more labour intensive. However, the modern technology, my only job is to ensure the generator for the lighthouse has enough gasoline. I spend most of my days painting. I found the one job that will pay me indirectly for something I love doing. I work on a small island that is only about a mile in diameter. There's no one else on the island besides birds and rodents. The main island of St. John is a 2-mile boat ride where I go once a month to get food and my painting supplies. Today was just another beautiful mid-September day. I was surprised to hear over the CB radio that a storm was heading this way towards Newfoundland. Because I live in the middle of the ocean, storms and strong winds are almost a regular occurrence. But today was a beautiful day. Before going to bed, I made sure the generator had enough fuel. Then I drifted off to sleep at about 10 p.m. I sleep at the base of the lighthouse on a cozy twin-size bed. It's about 2 a.m. I was awakened by the most horrific storm that I have ever experienced. Since I've taken this job 15 years ago, it was like I was on the inside of a jet engine. I thought for sure the lighthouse was going to topple over. At about 2:15 a.m, the whole top of the lighthouse had flew off. I could hear the violent waves crash within feet of my bed. I feel like I'm on a submarine that has just been torpedoed. I have nowhere to run. The heavy rain, strong winds, and crashing waves are constants. I know within seconds the lighthouse will be toppled and I will drown in the ocean. I throw myself under my bed. The 80 square foot room I'm in is completely dark. I continually yell out, "Please God, no, please, no, help, please God." Then, as if someone turned off the switch, the storm went away. At 5:30 a.m, I went outside to see the sun starting to come up. The island had been completely destroyed. Whatever vegetation was here is gone now. I look at the lighthouse and I'm amazed I survived, considering how much damage it suffered. From a distance, St. John's was completely dark. I could only imagine how many fatalities there must have been on that island. I attempt to use the CB radio to call for help, but I received no answer. I figure it will take some time before someone comes to rescue me, so I decide to start to clean up outside. I first check on the generator, which is fine, but the whole top of the lighthouse had been hurled into the ocean. As I start to pick up debris, I see an odd sight in the distance. I squint my eyes to make sure I'm actually seeing what I'm seeing. There are sailing vessels in the water, too many to count, which are no more than 10 miles away. They are sailing in a coordinated fashion, almost like a flock of geese. As the vessels get closer, I literally slap myself in the face to make sure I'm not dreaming. The vessels are wooden and they look like Viking vessels. They haven't been used in hundreds of years. The vessels are now within a mile. I think to myself that it's impossible that anything survived that storm, let alone wooden sailing vessels. I run into my room to search my room for binoculars. I ran back outside and I say, "Oh my fucking God," as I see thousands of men dressed in nothing more than animal furs. All the men on the vessels have the look in their eyes like they are coming to kill everything possible. I start to panic. My whole body starts to shake. I know these vessels are from a different era. I have studied sailboats my whole life. These vessels haven't been made like this in well over 500 years. I don't know if the storm thrusted them out of a time warp or something else. The vessels are now within a couple of 100 yards. I can see the countless men gripping their axes and swords. I have to do something. This island is too small for me to hide. I get a quick thought that pops into my head. What if I get the portable generator and plug in my circular saw and my battery operated radio? I'll quickly gather those things and run to the beach. I'll blast the radio and demonstrate the use of the circular saw. Hopefully these marauders will realise that I'm the only person on this island, and hopefully they'll be mesmerised by my unworldly gadgets. About 10 of the vessels hit the sand, and I see about 40 of the men exit each vessel and start to come towards me. As I hold the circular saw with both my hands, all I can hear is the heavy beating of my heart. I completely tune out the radio and the circular saw. I am 5'8" and about 150 pounds with all my clothes on. As the men approach me, I can see their leader makes his way towards the front of the other men. He has to be close to 6 feet tall and 6 inches in height. He has a weathered, beaten face and is nothing more than muscle. His long, dirty blonde hair goes midway down his back, and he is wearing elk or reindeer fur. He is the closest thing to the real-life He-Man that I have ever seen. There must be close to 400 men behind him, who are shorter than the leader, but they all have the same rugged demeanour. At this point I wish I could just die. Nothing in life has prepared me for this moment. The leader looks at my circular saw and just stares at it. He tilts his head from side to side as he tries to make sense of it. I don't know if he can distinguish the sounds from the generator, from the sounds of the radio, from the sounds of the circular saw. In an effort to not lose his unwieldy attention, I slowly lower the saw towards the ground where a log lays from the storm. I cut the log and I hear gasps from the crowd of men. The leader is overwhelmingly impressed with my gadgets. He even plays with the dials on my radio, where he hears mostly static and an occasional broadcast from St. John's. He turns around and tells his men something, and then the men disperse as they search the rest of the island. All the men try to get a closer look at my gadgets as they pass by, and the leader barks something at them, which I assume means go away or mind your own business. I hand the circular saw over to the leader and I demonstrate to him how to hold the button down to get the saw to work. He takes the saw and he seems completely enchanted, like a kid using a remote control car for the first time. He then cautiously starts to cut branches of wood to the point where he just doesn't want to stop. Minutes go by and I show him how to refuel the generator. I can tell that he has never seen anything mechanically or gas powered before. He puts both of his hands on the generator as it vibrates. I demonstrate that the saw has to be plugged into the generator in order for it to work. I think I've found the one thing that can tame these savages. The leader looks much more interested in using these new gadgets than on killing me. The other men start to return back to the leader. He says something to them in a harsh language that I can't pinpoint its origins. 4 of the men pick up the gadgets that I demonstrated for them, and they load them onto their leader's sailing vessels. The leader looks at me and drops his battle axe on the ground, as I assume is a gift for me. Then all the men get in their sailing vessels and head out into the Atlantic Ocean, away from Newfoundland. I stand on the beach completely overwhelmed. Every ounce of emotion has left my body as I try to make sense of what just happened. I never believed in UFOs or even God, but now I'm second guessing everything. The next day, Mr. Braddock, the superintendent of the lighthouse on the eastern shores of Canada, comes to inspect the damage to the island. He sees the damage to the lighthouse and knows that it will take weeks for it to become functional again. He is the first person I have seen or talked to regarding the Viking invasion of the island. He listens in complete disbelief as I tell him about the sailing vessels and the men on board. He thinks I have a concussion from the storm. Then I show him the battle axe, and he is completely enthralled by the old world craftsmanship. He thinks it was stolen from a museum. Mr. Braddock tries to get me to leave the island and get medical attention, but I insist that I'm fine and I remain on the island. I have made several paintings from what I observed, and I know I'll never receive credit for saving Newfoundland from a Viking invasion. Beneath Our World, posted by Bloody Spaghetti. Most scary stories feature some kind of dramatic event or a monstrous encounter. Some may feature an encounter with a violent criminal or a heart-seizing near-death experience. Mine is different from all of those. My scary story is entirely comprised of nothing but a mundane trip to the catacombs located underneath my hometown. The scariest thing that has ever happened to me was not life-threatening or even dangerous. I'm pretty sure that the things that keeps me up at night aren't some inhuman creature or a traumatic event. No, the things that haunts my nightmares are the emptiness beyond the vacuum of space and an awful vision of something people shouldn't witness. What terrifies me the most in this life has no explanation. It has no reason or rhyme. It has no point to it. My story begins with me descending to the aforementioned catacombs for a typical walk. I've roamed around these underground streets for dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of times, for as long as I can remember. I've been around some part of the city under my town. These catacombs are mostly concrete walls with some sewage pipes running through them. There is nothing inherently scary about those halls. The concrete walls do not produce monsters that attempt to tear the skin out of the unfortunate fool that veers into their subterranean lairs. While the catacombs are fairly dark, a typical flashlight is usually enough to illuminate a safe path for those who wish to traverse the chthonic passages. That's how my evening started. I descended into the nether realm that serves as the foundation upon which my hometown stands. I aimlessly walk around the endless halls, unbothered by anything external, my flashlight acting as my guide across the vast space ahead of me. I guess I took a turn I've never taken before at some point. That's how I managed to get myself into a part of the catacombs I've never seen before. The halls looked the same as they did everywhere else. There was something about them, however, something different. There was a soft humming sound coming from somewhere in that part of the catacombs. The sound was pleasant, and I felt a little compelled to follow its trail deeper into the underground city. My curiosity was piqued somewhat, since the whole place was usually deathly quiet. I was intrigued to find the source of the humming sound. Thus, I made my way towards what I felt was the source of the noise. I walked for a bit before stopping in my tracks by a drop of cold water hitting the top of my head. I remember looking up and seeing a leaking tube. I paid it no mind and pressed on, deeper into the unknown. The longer I went, the louder the humming had become. In no time, the humming seemed fairly close. I thought I had figured out where the humming came from. I decided to press on to find the sources of the sound. I picked up my pace before stopping dead in my tracks. Once a drop of water landed on my head. Looking up, I've noticed another leaking pipe above me. Nothing of this one much. I pressed on. I walked on for what must have been a few minutes, and while the humming had gotten closer and definitely louder, I couldn't locate the source. By that point, the humming had turned almost unbearable. It was hurting my ears. I've given up on finding the source of the hum and decided to head back home. I took what must have been 3 steps before feeling a drop of water land on my head. I looked up and I saw a leaking tube. Something felt wrong. I mused the possibility of walking in circles, but quickly gave up on that thought. It couldn't have been the case. I was walking in a straight line the whole time. The pipes around this part of town must have been in dire need of repair. I decided to keep walking back home. Then another drop of water landed on top of me. Shivers ran down my spine. I looked up and there was no leakage. I felt it. However, the drop of water landed on my head. I ignored it and decided to pick up my pace, reasoning I was getting tired. It was night time after all. Not a minute later, another water droplet fell on me. Shivers ran across my skin again. My heartbeat started rising. I was getting worried. I didn't even know why. Instinctively, I picked up my pace to a jog. I ran for a bit, and then another drop of water, and another, and another, and another landed on my body. Every few meters, a drop of water would land on top of my head, sending searing shivers through my skin. I don't even know why. With each time, my heartbeat grew faster and my breathing became more laboured. The longer I ran, the more frequent the drops of water had become. Eventually, I felt like I was running in the rain. My heartbeat had skyrocketed by that point, and my vision had become narrowed to a point where I could barely notice what's ahead of me. The room seemed to grow hot with each passing moment. I felt the sweat make its way across my body. Each breath I took in felt like I was inhaling acidic fumes that would surely corrode my lungs in no time. The sound of water tapping was everywhere. I think I had gotten myself soaked by that point. I didn't care though. I wanted to get out and go home. I don't know why I didn't scream or call anyone or anything. I guess I was too caught up in the weirdness of it all. The space all around me started spinning soon enough, and I felt as if I was starting to get tired. My movements became sluggish and hard. My legs turned heavy, like it was becoming slowly encased in concrete. The thought of getting stuck in some unknown substance in these catacombs sent my mind reeling. I focused on pushing through whatever was holding me back mindlessly. Thankfully, a dry, pained moan shook me awake out of my self-induced trance. I felt like I was electrocuted when I felt it. My body jolted and everything shook, twisting and turning for a second before turning still. A cold, wet substance caressed my body. The heat wore off, and the heaviness of my body started dissipating. My head felt light, and the light of my flashlight turned a little dim. I didn't have a care in the world for a second. I was floating in the vast cosmos and letting myself drown in a sea of dopamine that was flooding my nervous system. My chest felt heavy, and everything started spinning beautifully around me. The light of my flashlight bursting into a beautiful circular dance above my head. I was losing the feeling of my limbs. My body felt so light for a moment, like it wasn't even there. The feeling of weightlessness felt delightful. I was losing myself in some sort of unearthly pleasure. That is, until something violently shook me, forcing me to open my eyes. Something was a pale girl, paler than any human has the right to be. She was so pale I could trace all of her veins as they ran beneath her skin. She was screaming at me while shaking my body as hard as she could. We were underwater. I was. The girl's eyes, they caught my attention, sapping all of that pleasure away and turning it into fear. Her eyes, they were so misted, a thick veil of cataract material covered the blue shade of her eyeballs. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears as my blood raced through my arteries. Pins and needles ran across my body, and she pushed me above the surface of the water. I heaved and thrashed once I realized I nearly drowned. I took the deepest breaths I've ever had. I didn't care about the air smelt and tasted like sewage waste. My body screamed at me to breathe. I just floated there, taking up as much air as I could. I was confused and disorientated. I had no clue how I got into the water. On top of that, the insides of my skull were starting to pound like I was struck with a hammer. 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. No one came up. The girl didn't come up. Not thinking, I dove under the water again, looking around. There was nothing there. Nothing. Only muddy water. My heart sank and I pulled myself back up above the surface of the sea of waste. There was no girl. I was alone. I heard that dry, pained moan again, coming from behind me. Shivers running down my soaked back. I turned around, shining my flashlight at whatever was behind me. The light, it went nowhere. It just got sucked up into nothing, a form of pure pitch blackness. A complete nothing. A black hole stood in front of me. Every cell within my body started as the dread slowly built its way up my nervous system. I simply floated there, frozen in the space. As that thing, the absolute darkness, floated in front of me, I couldn't do anything other than simply stare. The black hole seemed to have the water curved around it into the form of a hooded figure. The sight was ingrained into my brain. I think the black hole was moving towards me as the light ray seemed to grow shorter with the passing moments. I didn't stare at it for too long, but I definitely saw it get closer. Once it was about a couple of inches away from me, something tugged at my back, startling me even more, causing me to lose my balance and sink underwater. Once I resurfaced, gasping for air once more and shaking like crazy, I looked around, but there was nothing there. I was alone again. The black hole had vanished. The light seemed to travel across the hall as I shone the flashlight all over the place. As I was finally gathering myself, something screeched in my ear. I didn't even have to turn. I just swam as fast as I could. I needed to get out. The further I went, the louder the screeching had turned. I couldn't stop, and I couldn't turn away. Whatever was behind was awful. I knew it. I knew it deep down. I knew that if I'd slow down, I'd be done for. So I swam, and then I ran, and I didn't stop until I got home. I nearly concussed myself on my porch when I got home. I was so relieved the awful experience had ended. I neglected to notice my footing had gone awry. I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was the catacombs. I couldn't wrap my head around that experience. To this day, I have no idea what happened and how it all turned out. I don't even know what I've seen there. I'm still clueless about how I lost my way or how I ended up in a pool of watery waste and what I've seen. I don't even know what the girl was. Thinking about her makes my skin crawl. As for the black hole thing, I couldn't get the visual of that all-consuming black mass out of my head. It kept plaguing my mind over and over. It ended up driving me to a point where I had to get wasted to be able to shake it from my mind. Get it out of my mind for a short time, that is. I ended up drawing the body of pure blackness as I witnessed it, an empty mass covered in a peculiar shaped liquid waste stream floating around it. That certainly helped, even though some nights I still dream of walking down a dark hall and into a murky pool where I end up being attacked by a girl's corpse. Every time I have this nightmare, her cold touch feels so real, and her blue clouded eyes force cold sweat to run down my skin. One thing is for sure, while I don't know what happened in those catacombs, I will admit this much. I am afraid of the arcane darkness that dwells just beneath our world. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Don't forget to click the link below to donate to TeamSeas. Let's get £3 million of trash out of the oceans. If you've enjoyed these scary stories, then don't forget to subscribe and click the like button and turn on the bell so you get notified every time I upload. If you have any scary stories, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares. Then follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.